manager here at the Gathering Spot. So I want to welcome you guys. This evening. We are in for a treat. We have Malcolm D here, the director of The Best Man. The Best Man is celebrating its 20th anniversary, y'all, so let's just give that a round of applause. So, the Gathering Spot is notorious for curating events such as these. So everybody, do me a favor, look to your left and say neighbor. Are you a member of the Gathering Spot? And if they say no, ask them why and tell them to see me when this is over. Y'all, this will be the last year that the Gathering Spot is only in Atlanta. We are expanding. We'll be in D.C. early next year. And you want to be a part of this community. You want to be a part of this foundation. So before this event ends tonight, make sure you see myself or any TGS team member and ask them about membership because you want to be a part of this. You don't want to get left in this last decade, okay? All right, y'all ready to begin? All right. So please give a round of applause for Emmy Award-winning broadcaster Sharon Reed. She is our moderator for this evening.
How's everybody doing? Can you believe it's been 20 years? Right, seems like only yesterday. Tonight, we can't get enough of this movie. After decades, I mean, I'm still watching it, not just because of this gig. So tonight we're going to celebrate, salute, maybe even roast a little bit. Malcolm D. Lee, we love him so much. Malcolm, come out here. And Hoya Saxa. Both fellow Georgetown alums, so it's only fitting that we come together for this.
Absolutely.
I was on campus about 10 to 15 years after him, though, so let's not get it twisted. What did you do?
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
Looks, okay.
I'm not starting.
We both still have a lot of living to do.
That's right. That's right.
But we're honored to have you here. You flew in when?
Just a couple hours ago.
Okay, and how long will you be here?
The first thing smoking tomorrow morning.
You see, as much
Back
as
to work.
black
Back to
people
work.
support your state, shouldn't you be living here?
In Atlanta?
Yes.
I love Atlanta. I've got family here, but New York's my home.
Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to expand there.
Spread the love.
Yeah, exactly. But I love Atlanta. Thank you for having me. Gathering Spot. It's an honor to be here and talk about The Best Man, my first picture.
Your first picture, breakout, really a home run. I want to start with a quote, and maybe you can tell me who said it. It's sad that you have to ask about what is black love. The idea that it exists shouldn't even get questioned. Do you know who said that?
No. Who said that?
You said it. 6
I
years
said that?
ago. You said it. And so it made me think, as I was doing research for this,
Uh-oh.
were you intentional when you wrote this to put black love on display? Or are you just writing a love story? We're black people, we dream in color, and it just came out that way. Were you intentional about it?
I was intentional, but not so much about black love per se. I will say that there's a couple of things that happened. With Best Man, which was the 6th screenplay that I had written, and that's after several drafts of several other screenplays. It was.
Were the other ones about love?
No. The second to last one before Best Man was a love story, and in fact, that was kind of my ode to Annie Hall and When Harry Met Sally. It was called Feast and Famine, and I wanted to make that movie. I'd been in film school, done a number of screenplays, including that one. I wanted to make that. I didn't want to do any more short films. I wanted to do a feature, and I was going to do that, and I had a budget for it in the whole 9 yards. But I couldn't raise the money for it. And I said, well, I'm going to write something so commercial that I'm going to sell it and use that money to make my Feast and Famine movie. And what I wrote was The Best Man. And, part of it was, and you ask about intention, like, what I felt more than anything that I wasn't seeing myself represented on screen. Especially a black, educated person who was depicted in movies and TV as this very stiff, overly articulate, check their blackness at the door, kind of trope that didn't ring true to the people that I went to school with at Georgetown, who were very much black identified, upperly mobile, and were all varied from different places around the country, differing opinions. And it was in part a reaction to the men depicted in Waiting to Exhale, because I didn't feel like I thought those were very archetypal characters that I wanted to do for black men, like Terry McMillan and Forrest Whitaker did with Waiting to Exhale, with 4 very different black women at the center. So I want to do this. I wanted to make sure. I mean, again, I'm thinking very commercial. Set it around a wedding. There hadn't been a black wedding movie to date. I said, let me make it a wedding. Let's put it, the trappings and the.
You were that clinical.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, because all the other screenplays were kind of, meandering, without structure. And screenplays are all about structure. 3-act structure. You can't get away from it. That is how it goes. That is how movies are made. That's how stories are told. And so I wanted to have a 3-act structure. I wanted to have set pieces, surrounding a wedding. I wanted to have unrequited love. I wanted to have, a guy, who was uncommitted. A guy like, I wanted to talk about religion. I wanted to have a magic prop, which was the book that was going through the whole movie. So there are all these things that I knew.
You wanted to have a dance scene?
Well, that was a byproduct.
Right.
But yeah, so like I was intentional about it, but not so much about. And I would say in terms of like black love, it's like I wanted to show like there are black people that have a myriad of emotions and issues and things that they think about and fears and being in relationships and hang-ups that everyone else does, and make it be a very universal story, but it just has this cultural specificity of being black.
And you're writing this in your parents' basement.
That's right.
And so are you down there in the dark for 8-10 hours a day? I mean, what's
down in the dark?
What's the actual
there
process?
was a window.
Well, I don't know, with just a flashlight. What is that process like? How long did it take you?
Well, once I decided that's what I was going to write, it didn't take me that long. Maybe 6 months. No, yeah, I don't know. I can't really remember. Because it all kind of runs together a little bit, and I know that by the way, it was the same. Spike Lee and I are cousins. If you don't know,
We're gonna get to that.
but he was in my parents' basement when he was in film school, and so it's the same basement that that same basement has produced 2 filmmakers, and so it's still available. So I wrote it there, and I remember when I finished. I came up. I finished in the morning, because I sometimes I write very well in the morning, and that's like from like 4 or 5 o'clock, until maybe 10, and then I kind of come alive more like after 3 p.m. because you got to find out when you write the best, because it's not always the same for everybody. And I can sometimes, if I'm in a good groove, I can write for hours. But I came up from my parents' basement when I finished it. I said, if this is not it, I don't know what they want. And if this doesn't work, I'm gonna go to law school. I'm gonna go teach.
You were done.
I was gonna teach school, something like. 'Cause I was frustrated. I was just like, I don't know what they want. If they don't want this, I don't know what they want.
Wow. And your parents must have been real cool to just kind of let you find yourself.
Well, look, I mean, the way my father put it was like I was working on something. He, as long as that's something that I wasn't just sitting around like twiddling my thumbs and playing video games and watching TV, drinking beer, whatever. That I was, I had a goal, and I actually tried to get a job, like like in a movie theater or a Blockbuster. There was a time when we used to go to stores and rent movies.
Y'all know Blockbuster?
So
Or you don't know?
I tried to get a job at Blockbuster and try to get a job as a movie theater manager, and they wouldn't hire me. So and then my father was just like, look, man, you just gotta keep working on your craft, keep working on your stuff. My father's a musician, but he was also a school teacher. So it was like. And my mother was very much, and the thing is, they'd already seen a filmmaker come out of their house. You know what I mean? That they helped to, buoy when he was trying to figure it all out. So I think, and I got to work with Spike, and then it got to the point where I could not go any further with Spike. It was just like, okay, you know what? Here's your ceiling. I came to him, I was like, yo, man, think I can get a job on He Got Game? He was like, nah, done. Finished. There was no place I could go.
It's like, there comes that time where there's the teacher-student relationship, right? And the student flies away, or in your case, maybe, the student...
Get pushed out the nest, man.
Got pushed out. And I read that you said you were very hurt by that, but you still acknowledged that you'd done all you could under him, and you needed to find your way because you were going to be different filmmakers of black content, a lot of it, but you're so different.
Yeah, I mean, I think, at that time, I was only hurt because I needed some money, Like, I was like, no, seriously, I mean, I knew that I had no business asking him to, I had gone as far as I could go. I had been a production assistant. I had been, a post-production assistant. I had been his assistant. I had been a director's trainee. Like, the next step is either you're going to be an assistant director if you want to go into DJ in that route, or you're going to direct. And it was like, honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened. That it was like, okay, well, that is no longer an outlet for you, So what you going to do?
Did the relationship suffer?
No. It was, look, Spike is always going to be Spike. The way he is, with people. If you've ever met him, he's very kind of cut and dry, and that's how he is with his entire family. So it's like that's just how he is. And I wasn't like, oh man, it's messed up, man. It's whatever. It's like it was what needed to happen.
So
because he gave me plenty of opportunities. Okay, prior. He showed me the business. He showed me the ropes. I read a lot of his books. I was around when he was, doing all these things, and I got to see the emergence of a great American world-leading filmmaker. So I was learning so much through osmosis, and then on top of it, he was the producer on Best Man. He had seen my scripts early on, and he helped me get an agent back in '97. Had the agency fly me out and put me up and meet with me and all this stuff, and 2 years later, still nothing was happening. I wrote Best Man. He was like, I gave it to him. He was like, this is it. And next thing I knew, I was meeting not with creative executives or development people. I was meeting with the head of the studio. And so I knew things had changed then. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, I had to have that time where I was just like, okay, well, you're either going to sink or you're going to swim.
Was the relationship with Spike and the mentorship, it sounds like it was very raw, very, very pure. Do you ever feel like that hindered you? Because I remember at Georgetown, you took a year off, right, to go work with him. And I remember people saying, wow, he's got it made. His cousin Spike Lee, the carte blanche, But I remember thinking, God, that's got to be difficult because Spike's everything. And here you come saying, yeah, I want to do that. We didn't know the process.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. It was end of my junior year, and Spike called me up. He was about to go into production on Malcolm X. And he called me and said, what are you doing next year? I said, I'm going to my senior year. And he was like, take the year off, work on Malcolm X. And so I was like, wow, and it was going to be a year. It only ended up being half a year, or a semester, because once Hollywood decides like you have spent enough money, that's it. You're gonna
tighter production.
Yeah,
schedule.
they put the squeeze on them, and Bond company got involved. It's a whole thing. So, but yes, and when I was in film school, to your point, yeah, there was that attitude, even from the professors, even from the administration. There was like, oh, like I tried to be a teaching assistant, because these are like, jobs where you can make money and you can, get partial scholarships or what have you, get access to equipment. And they were like, I was hearing, not firsthand, but secondhand. Oh, what does he need a TA ship for? His cousin Spike Lee. He's got it made. People were, my fellow students were like, oh, you're gonna come out of school and direct the movie right away.
Yeah.
And so I think there were those people, and then and I think that there were times in film school where I would make a movie that I thought was, a good representation of me as a filmmaker and deserved recognition, but, didn't get it. And I got the hint sometimes that was a factor. That being his cousin, I didn't need that, or we're not going to let him, shine in that regard. So,
You said there was, though, while you were still under his tutelage, this magical moment. You're on set, was it Girl 6, I think it was? And, he's shooting this scene, or he's setting up for this scene, and your eye sees something different than Spike, and you speak up. Tell us about that.
well, yeah, there was this moment on Girl 6 that, what happened? So what happens is they set up all these telephones. This is like this magical moment in the movie where Isaiah Washington and Teresa Randall, they're reconciling, they kiss, and because she's a phone sex operator, all these phones dropped out of the sky, right? And so he had set up a wide shot, and I said, and not making a suggestion, I just thought, oh, you're gonna do a long lens shot of that too, right? He was like, nah. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he did the setup that he was gonna do, and he was like, Malik, that was the DP, director of photography, he was like, put a 75 on there, which is a longer lens. And I was like, okay, all right. So I mean, that was a good moment, because I was like, okay, I don't know if I felt validated, but I felt good about that moment, because I was like, oh, I have an eye, and I'm seeing something, and he likely would have come to it himself. It wasn't that. It happens all the time with me too. Like, I'm on set, and if I'm not planning on doing something, a script supervisor or director of photography or somebody says, makes a suggestion, and I wasn't thinking, I was like, I don't need that. And then I'll rethink, I'm like, oh, maybe I do. So, I'm a person who takes a good idea from anybody, and I think that, you have an agenda as a filmmaker, as a director. You have to have a plan. And then it's like, oh, you discover things when you look through the lens, or when an actor does something, or when you do a move, or you get something that they get that you weren't expecting, and you're like, oh, well, let me build on that. So it's at the time it was very special to me. Now I'm kind of like, okay, it totally makes sense.
It gave you the confidence maybe to say, I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, and I was ready before that, because I had already done my second year movie, and I knew I wasn't going to do another short. So I was feeling like, okay, and by the way, even today, I'll do some things that I'm just like, oh, that was a good idea, And
Yeah.
so you're as a filmmaker, you're constantly learning, you're constantly building on your craft. You don't have it all figured out, ever. It's like I'm still getting my cinematic language and my storytelling ability. It's an ever evolving process.
Do you feel like if you ever stop that creative learning curve, if you will, that's when you're done?
I don't see that ever happening.
Yeah.
Because there's always something more to learn. I mean, I'm currently, working on Space Jam, and it's like nothing I ever expected I would ever do in my life. With all this animation and visual effects, it's just like I never would have jumped into that realm. But
Can that fill you up, that make-believe? I mean, it's all make-believe, but you know what I mean? With the animation, or is that a little bit of a colder process?
It's super cool. It's super cool. I had a great time, and but to answer your question, I don't think I'm ever gonna stop. And my father asked me recently, did I ever think about retirement when I thought I might retire? And I'm like, I don't see that.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna keep making movies until, they say you're done. We're gonna pull you out. I just don't. I don't feel like I'm ever going to, get tired of doing and figuring out, the next story, and how to tell it, in a way that I think is emblematic of me and, what I want to say to the world.
So, Black Love, The Best Man, 20 years later, I find people saying more and more today, oh, Black love is in, Black love is hot, and people are celebrating that. That's what Hollywood wants, Black everything. Is Hollywood that cyclical, I guess, that, these are just Black people living on screen, being human, loving, crying, cheating, fighting, whatever it is? Is that a myth or is that real? Is Black love in?
Well, I think, Black content is in because, they're seeing it makes money. I mean, it's been proven. And by the way, it's not just, making money, but like they want Black voices, behind the camera, behind the pens, telling the story from that perspective. I mean, like trying to hire a Black writer now or a Black executive, you can't find them because everybody is working.
Yeah.
Because they finally woke up to the notion that there's not only these voices authentic and people crave them. Not only, I mean, obviously we all want to see ourselves on screen represented in the ways that we see ourselves, not the way other people see us. And I think that's something we did from the beginning on Best Man. And every movie I've ever tried to do has had universal themes and has, it's these people could be any race of people. My big fat Greek wedding, my best friend's wedding, easily could be The Best Man. And so, yes, I think now because there was a time where comedy is dead. And, we made Girls Trip and like, boom, it was huge, right?
It's back.
And, there was a time where romantic comedy is dead. And then they made Crazy Rich Asians and like, it made a ton of money. So now we're looking, what's the crazy Black people movie we can do, crazy rich Black people movie we can make. So there's if they feel like it can make money and they can get authentic voices and they can get people to tune in, then that's what they're gonna go for because it feels fresher now because people are accepting of it.
So Hollywood understands that authenticity, Black people doing the storytelling, putting it on screen. I mean, Bob Weinstein called you at one point in your career, and you tell them what the quote was, and I'm surprised. I mean, those are the conversations that go on all the time.
Well, I mean, that mind you, that was at a time. This was like 2012 or 11 or so when Bob Weinstein asked me to do Scary Movie 5, and it was at a time where the so-called African American movie wasn't performing very well. It was underperforming. So there was this blanket statement, from Hollywood, from Harvey Weinstein, that said, well, that's a bad business model. So we don't need to make those movies anymore. If we want a Black audience, we can cast Vin Diesel, we can cast Morris Chestnut, we can cast Terrence Howard in a movie or a television show, and we'll get a Black audience. And for a while that was a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then, and I had colleagues tell me like, this Black movie shit, it's dead, it's over, it's done. And I'm like, and I've always been thinking like, nothing works until it does, right? And in Hollywood, the saying goes, nobody knows anything. Again, nothing works until it doesn't. What Bob said to me was, I said, like, David Zucker, who was the producer on Scary Movie 5 and had done Airplane, a Kentucky Fried Movie, and, Naked Gun, all these he was the kind of godfather of spoof movies. And I said, well, you got him, so why don't you just use him? And he's just like, no, David doesn't know Black, and we need Black in this. Now, mind you, that was a lot of it had to do with the Wayans brothers having done the first two Scary movies, and feeling like there needed to be some hip quotient or whatever. And listen, I needed a job, so I was like, all right, whatever, Bob, fine, no problem. But I think that, you know, in terms of, yes, there's a tide of the turning that they want us to tell our stories, you know, strong black lead and all that in Netflix. But, you know, that's not gonna happen all the time. You know what I mean? Like, they'll still hire, you know, white writer to do this, white director to do that, and, you know, and they won't think twice about it. I think it's changing a little bit, and because, you know, we as the creators are demanding it, and, you know, we're trying to give people opportunities, because a lot of times what happens also is, like, you know, some writers, you know, aren't as experienced. They don't know structure. They don't know that you got to put these set pieces in here, and you got to. This is what the market demands. This is what the studio wants, and sometimes it's hard to, like, you know, teach on the run too. So, like, there's a balance that has to happen too.
And a lack of opportunity, maybe.
Lack of opportunity and practice, and it does take practice. And, you know, I've done enough movies now, and been in enough writers' rooms, and been in enough, you know, situations, editing rooms now, where I'm like, okay, I need this to happen here, or else this movie's not going to work.
What about the double standard? At least it feels like that, right? Because you said Harvey makes that statement, Harvey Weinstein, about, you know, black films, they're not working, they're not making us money. But in my research, the budgets matter, the marketing matters, the release date matters, all that goes into it. I mean, $9 million, that was your budget. And you made 3-4 times that at the box office. So why did he say that? Why were these movies not doing or performing as he wanted?
Well, look, I think you got to look at. I mean, this was late -- that time that you know, Harvey was making that statement was the late aughts, and they weren't working. And I think that, you know, they also thought they could make those kinds of movies, but they weren't good at making them. You know, and you know, Tyler Perry was the only one that was really, like, consistently making box office hits. I think, you know, with Best Man, it was. I'll even start from the early '90s. You know, with Boys in the Hood. You know, John Singleton makes that movie, 1991. It's got all the hype. It does well in the box office. And then, you know, it's very much a copycat industry, so they're going to make a bunch of movies that take place in the inner city.
Menace to Society.
Menace to Society and South Central. The list goes on. And they made a bunch of those, right? And then, you know, Spike called you know, John Singleton Frankenstein, because he birthed all these movies. And he called me Frankenstein also, because, you know, with Best Man, it was all these black romantic comedies that came out. And so it's a copycat business, and then, like, when people start being like, well, I don't want to see that anymore. Like, I want to see something different. And, you know, audiences' tastes change, you know? And again, nothing works until it does. When we set out to make, the audiences were ready for Best Man, because, you know, although Love Jones wasn't like a huge box office success, it's a cult classic. People really responded to that movie. They loved the casting, they loved the story, they loved the vibe of that. Waiting to Exhale was also, you know, a box office success. You know, it showed upwardly mobile black people. Same with Soul Food. They weren't all upwardly mobile, but they weren't they were in the inner city of Chicago, but they weren't, you know, dealing with drugs and despair and pathology. And it was like, oh, so the groundwork was laid for Best Man to, you know, be castable. To be done at a price, and that's the operative words nowadays. It's going to be done for a price, and you know what? It's like, as you need to be responsible for it, because it's like, you can't expect, like, your movie, like that movie, had it been a white cast of like let's say, like, Taye Diggs, Morris Chestnut, Harold Perrineau, Terrence Howard. At the time, you know, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon could have played those roles, and the movie would have been twice the budget, more than likely, because of them. But a lot of that's going to be because of who's in the movie. When you talk about a movie like that, it's just like all the money is on the screen.
So then let's talk about the cast, because, you know, it's amazing when you look at it. Sine, Nia, Morris, Monica. Regina Hall, right? I want to know about the casting process. Did you have existing relationships? Did you know them? Or was it just pure, these people showed up, the chemistry, they're incredible, diverse talents with range, and they're in your movie and they break out and now they're all huge stars.
Yeah, no. We had a casting process. Robbie Reed Humes was the casting director who had, cast School Days and Hollywood Shuffle and, a bunch of I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. And, she was kind of like the leading, black casting director. And, the thing about it is, when I wrote the script, one of the other reasons I wrote the script, I read an article or a little blurb from, I think it was both Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, said, the lack of material in Hollywood is so bad, we can't even do a movie together, right? As,
That's tragic.
So I was like, I'm gonna write this with Will and Jada. I'm gonna write this with Will and Jada in mind. And when you do that, the characters automatically get elevated because it's like, well, Will Smith's gonna want to play this kind of character, and you want to, entice him with that. And so, like, the bar was set very high. Obviously, we didn't get, Will Smith, but in my mind, I was like, okay, well, Will Smith could play this, Chris Tucker could play this part, and on and so. And so, when I wrote the script, here you had 8 substantial parts for black actors where they could actually sink their teeth into and display their craft. And so there was a great response to the material. So we had a lot of people come in to either audition or meet. And so, yeah, first I think we started with Tay because he had just come off of How Stella Got Her Groove Back. And I was like, yeah, he's probably the right guy to be that. I knew I wanted Harold Perrineau. Terrence Howard auditioned. Morris Chestnut at first auditioned for Harper, because I wasn't sure about him at the time because I was just like, I hadn't seen a whole lot from Morris. I hadn't seen a whole lot of range. But he surprised me, and I thought he was very, very good. And we put him in the Lance role. Sanaa, I had about 5 other actresses in mind. Sanaa was not known at the time. Let's see.
And did anybody turn it down of those?
No. No, like Lisa Nicole Carson, who was, it was Ally McBeal at the time. She was very, very big at the time in the 90s. There are a few others. I can't really remember who else. Regina King came in. She's
got range.
She does. Yes, she does. But it was like but she wasn't even going for that. She was going for Jordan, and we wanted Nia, and we had a plethora of choices for Shelby and for Monica. So it was, we had a lot of people came in, and it was fantastic because once we decided on the cast, and we got to New York, and they got the opportunity to just kind of hang out for there's like 2 weeks, a 2-week period where you're rehearsing and doing fittings, and they just got to bond as a group. And because then they all had like the kind of like similar trajectories of their career, and they were all very happy to be together and see this, this camaraderie of blackness, and all these layers, be displayed. So they were very excited to be a part of it. And yeah, there was a lot of respect for the script, So I was very grateful that they were, all, so willing, not just willing, but excited to be in the present. It was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Yeah, the chemistry, undeniable, and much of how they translate your written word, right, to the screen. But then there's the unspoken stuff too, and your director choices and the cutaways. Let's play the poker scene because that was, well, yeah.
And they're playing spades, by the way.
We are gathered here today in the sight of
A
God.
lot of people think it's poker, but it's spades.
Marriage is sacred. My folks been together 35 years. Means something. I hear that. Besides, marriage is gonna curb that appetite for more women. In case y'all didn't know, marriage is a cure to promiscuity.
In what world?
God damn. You would have never known that you graduated summa cum laude. You say some dumb ass shit.
Man, there's a time for everything, players. We're in the real world now. The real world, real things.
Hey. I don't give a damn what y'all say. Ain't nothing natural about no monogamy. I mean, God did not intend for us to be with just one person. If he had, he wouldn't have given us all this sperm. These bitches would not outnumber us the way that they do.
Okay, so wait, were you a philosophy major now, man?
He is a bullshit artist.
Thank you.
Fuck y'all. Y'all know as well as I do, ain't nothing better than some pussy except some new pussy.
Hey, you got a point there, though,
No, and plus you can't trust these bitches anyway, man. They just as scammers as us niggas, man.
Oh, not all women, player. Not all women.
Oh, so you don't think that me has ever got with any other dudes?
I'm the first, the last, and the only.
Really? So how do you know this?
Because the pussy curves to my dick, nigga, that's how I know. Besides, I know I'm an angel, man.
So you mean tell me with all the sticking and moving that you've done, you don't think that me has ever tippy-toed out the door on you once? Quentin, just play. What if she did? Go out and get a little swerve on her. Don't you think she'd be well within her rights? It's karma, baby. Gotta take a piss. Why do you have to do that? Whose hand is it?
I feel like, right? I feel like there's a Quentin in every, core group of black male friends.
Yeah, for sure. That scene, it was a scene that I cared a lot about, and is it's still to this day one of my favorite scenes I've shot, and really was kind of like the core of why I made the movie. It's like I wanted these four very different black men to express themselves freely. For a lot of women, it was like their favorite scene too, because they were like, "Oh wow, I'm a fly on the wall. What they saying?" And the studio was very, very nervous about it, because it was originally written. It was a 10-page scene, and 10 pages of dialogue. It's like that's unusual. Like you just don't. I wouldn't recommend it. But I knew that I wanted it to have some ebb and flow, and that it was gonna give them the opportunity to display character, and then eventually get to push story. And they're all like fantastic in the role, and we really beat the scene up. We rehearsed it extensively, and I had them playing cards. Some of them, I think Harold never played spades before. When I remember, he might have. I don't remember. But we really worked on the scene, as the timing of it and whatnot, and I just felt like this is going to be great. Like it's going to be a great scene, and we're going to have good laughs, and we're going to have good tension. And
But you said 10 pages, so what was left on the cutting room floor? How much further were they going?
Not
to go?
much. I tell you what, we had to cut one exchange because it was referencing a Biggie Smalls song. It was referencing One More Chance, and they were singing it, and it was
Too expensive?
It was too expensive, and they were like, you got to cut that out of there. I was like, all right, fine. So it was more at the very beginning of the scene, and so yeah, I don't know. It's again one of my favorite ones, and didn't really know how I was going to shoot it until I knew I wanted movement in it, and I knew that it couldn't just be like cut. So the director of photography and I, Frank Prinzi, came up with the concept of shooting with two cameras constantly moving. One was a wider shot, one would be like over the shoulder, and then wide master, and it was an all day thing. We shot 12,000 feet of film, which if any of you filmmakers, it's quite a bit. I know nobody probably even shoots film in here and who's ever shot film, but they might have, and so you can appreciate that's a lot, and they were also like, it's a lot of film you shot there that day, so like whatever, that's what it was.
The characters are complex, right? You have Harper, who pens this novel, writes about his friends, changes the names. I mean, you've acknowledged that you've drawn from pieces and parts of the people in your life. In the movie, they realize it, they come at him. How about you? How closely were your experiences, your friends, aligned with, are you Harper?
Am I Harper? That's always the question. Am I Harper? No. Look, there's parts of Harper that I'm a writer, he's a writer. He's a little bit more, I think, atheist than I am or was. But it's funny when what I appreciate about what happened on screen is that a lot of people, a lot of my friends, were like, "Oh, that's not how I am." I had this one friend of mine who thought that I was thinking about her when I wrote Shelby, and I was like, "We cool, but I really was not thinking about you at all." There are friends who were like, "Oh, yo, you made me merch," and I'm like, I wasn't thinking about you. There were other.
Have you acknowledged to the people you were thinking about?
Yes, those who know.
And what was the reaction?
They're cool. They were good. All good. And there are people in there that there's such like amalgams, I had lots of, female friends in college, and, that helped me to write, and, the dudes that are there were very much, there's no one friend of mine who was, any of these dudes. Like, the guy that I based merch on was like, he's not all that. Like there was a time in his life where he was like, he was being kind of like, squashed by this woman. But, like the totality of his experience and his personality, he's not that,
Quentin seems like that would have to be one guy.
Well, I know who you're thinking of, but it's not.
Okay.
Although he claimed it when he was live, God rest his soul. He claimed that it was him. It was a friend of mine from undergrad, but no, he really wasn't. I mean, look, like you said, everybody has a shit talker in their crew, and especially and I know guys like Lance who are ultra religious and ultra misogynistic. But and love their wife, and and philandering and
contradiction.
And but like the thought of somebody getting with their what, I mean, they couldn't take it.
Yeah.
So it's Lance is very real. That's the other thing. People recognize themselves in these characters, which was also very fantastic. They said we all know somebody like Harper, like Jordan, like And there are whole parties like, oh, Team Jordan, I'm Team Jordan, or I'm Team Robin, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, boy, it's Like, let's enjoy them all. But like, it's great that people want to take sides.
You do seem to really nail it when it comes to the complexity of the black woman. Flirty, hard, smart, talented, strong, a fixer, sometimes all of that in one scene. Now, let's take a look at that other scene. Sexy.
Just a second. All right, girlfriend, get it together. You know, you are really destroying the groove up in here.
Sorry. You look nice.
Gee, thanks. So Lance figured it out, didn't he?
Yeah. He figured it out, promptly beat my ass, and, called off the wedding.
What?
Yeah.
Well, was he serious?
I don't know. Well, he was drunk. I don't know.
Oh my God. Well, do you want me to get you anything?
Nah,
Are you
see, you've
okay?
done enough. You've done enough. See, you don't seem to understand something. See, they would be in marital bliss by the time the book was supposed to have come out. But thanks to you, Miss, I want an exclusive, I got my ass whooped. I almost got thrown from a fucking building because of your ass. So thank you, Jordan. Thank you. And what the fuck is that smell?
Woo! You know, you got some nerve blaming me for your skeletons, mister.
Jordan?
No, I'm not done, Harper. You wrote the book. You aired your dirty laundry. No matter how hard you tried to disguise it, it was you. You got me all fired up saying that my life was empty and that we could have been great together. That was you, okay? Not me. You.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I know we're both a little emotional here. I'm sorry. We're peas in a pod, remember?
You know, maybe if I had the luxury of getting my ass whooped, I could be calm right now. But I have been drinking tequila shots. My hormones are raging out of control. I'm emotional, I'm horny, and I don't want to hear about no goddamn peas. Fuck you, good night. How about that?
Can we at least hold each other?
Black woman.
She is, for sure. No, I mean, you know, that's, you know, I think for Harper, Jordan is an idealized mate, you know, somebody that, you know, they were on the same page, on the same plane, intellectually, they were friends, you know, and she was the one that got away. He was the one that got away. Things never, and I remember, you know, before I was even writing it, I was like, you know, do you think, I was asking some of my close friends, do you think there's, it's universal that people have like the one that got away or the unrequited love? They're like, hell yeah, you know, yeah, that's universal. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so that's real. And even if it's not, it's like it's aspirational. It's something that people, you know, can aspire to, at least, like, you know, have, if they haven't actively thought about it, there's somebody it's in the back of their brain. So, you know, I wanted that dilemma, you know, of like, oh, let's have our night, and like, you know, I'm not sure if I can actually commit to somebody. And she's so different than you. She's so different than what I kind of like wrote about and what I, feel, so, it's, and I think there's, a lot of people are like, oh my God, like, Harper and Jordan should definitely hook up. And like, but I think that's real also that like, sometimes that it doesn't happen, that things are not meant to be. And so, yeah, I mean, in writing Jordan, it was a challenge. I mean, like, thank you for saying, I mean, about writing the women. It's like I try, I listen to a lot of women. I have women that I respect read the screenplay. My wife's a very great barometer for characters, and I get a lot of ideas from her and her girlfriends and stuff like that. And so I think that it's it's important to draw very layered characters because everyone's complex. No one's all a good guy or a bad guy. I mean, in the real world, you might hate Jordan for like, about to, sleep with somebody else's man. Like, you're like, that's fucked up, right? But like, you might be like, but she also is very relatable, right? Like, I'm gonna take my shot.
Will Packer's here tonight, and I know you two team up and seem to be able to really relate, whisper to that core audience, particularly when it comes to the Black woman. What's that kind of collaboration like?
Will is, he's just a master producer and idea guy, and he's incredibly insightful, has his finger on the pulse all the time, and really a great collaborator and working with him. Well, what's the secret sauce? I don't know. It's like I don't know. Like I think that it's a desire to see full Black people on screen. Men and women. I think that for a while it was just like women were telling us their stories about the men in their lives, and some of them are not so savory, not especially Black men. And like I took exception to that, and wanted to write that. I think Will, in his quest to make movies, was had of the same mindset of like showing Black people in all their dimensions, and so because we want, again, it's like I've been saying, we all want to see ourselves on screen, and we are avid moviegoers and content consumers. So we're gonna show up, and we're also gonna call it out when it's whack. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like when it came, if you're talking specifically about how he and I came together, we were talking about working together before Girls Trip happened, and trying to find some common ground. And I think that he had come to me about some other projects that ended up getting made that I didn't direct. I will not say what they were, but needless to say that when we did come together, it was the right project. He pitched Girls Trip as an idea, about Black women at Essence doing the Hangover thing, and I said, I'm in. Like 100% R-rated, that'll be great. Yeah. And fortunately we found the right script, we found the right cast, and we found the right time of year. You talked earlier about
the marketing and release date, and the tenor of the country, at the time. You have to remember, comedy is taking a big hit because a lot of comedy is being consumed on the go. People are looking at, Funny or Die or whatever the short content is, on their phones, or they're watching it at home on TV, and like, what's getting people to get out of their house to go see a movie and to go see a comedy, which is a very communal experience. Movies are a communal experience anyway, but comedies and horror movies in particular, you have to go see that with a big audience because you get to be scared together, you get to laugh together. And so
there had not been, in 2017, there had not been a comedy that had worked at all that entire year. And this is the first 6 months of Trump, and people needed to laugh.
Yeah.
And, here was this movie on the horizon starring 4 black women. It looked fun, and it was like, and black women, again, they show up and and they're like, all right, you making this movie for me? Let me see.
And it needs to be authentic.
And yes, it needs to be authentic, and they felt the authenticity from the time that they saw the trailer, and they were like, okay, I'm in. And they came out, and it was a big hit.
The chemistry on the set for, Girls Trip, between you and Will even, the best man, you talk about it in terms of, this beautiful time. They were eager to be there. It's just an incredible marriage. It's a stereotype that, black people can't work well together. Any of that on the set?
No, not on the Best Man. It was, again, there was such a, you have to think about the time, there were not many movies like this in the late 90s, that actors got to play off one another, and it was about, like you said, just regular black people doing regular American things.
But was there instant trust from these actors? I know they had emerging careers. They hadn't yet fully arrived, but here you show up. You said you didn't have pre-existing relationships or anything, and yet they trust you to make it happen.
I think a lot of it had to do with the material, and then I knew what I wanted. I think with a lot of actors, what I hear overwhelmingly is that they want to be directed. They want to know. They don't want to be like, oh, well, it could be like this or it could be like that. Or you as a director have to have a vision for the story you're telling. And I'm very clear and very specific about what I want and how I want it to be. And so you rehearse, and then you listen to what they have to say, their feedback, and and that's the main thing that a director has to do is get the actor's trust. And I knew that, going in, and I think, I had done acting myself, so I kind of knew the process. I knew the language a little bit. I wasn't intimidated by working with actors. So, and I love working with actors. So it gives me joy to see them embody a role, and, and they feel that energy from me, that I'm like, I like what they're coming up with. And if it's something that's not working, then, I'll let them know that too. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, Harold and Melissa, they wanted to try, to improvise some of their relationship, and when they would do it, they would get into these fierce arguments, and I'm like, oh God, this isn't funny. Y'all got to be kind of
too real.
Yeah, it was too real.
Yeah.
Some of the conflicts they were having, but it was good for them to do that, and I say, okay, well, you know what? I like it, but it's not gonna work for the movie. I'll give you another example, on Best Man Holiday, when so you remember in the end of the first Best Man, Melissa and Terrence wake up in the bed together, and they scream and they run and whatever. So Best Man Holiday, we have another moment like that, and, they were both being a little difficult that day, and, they were in the bed, and they wanted to play with it more. And I was like, I know what I want out of this scene, and you guys can't do this. It has to be this way. I let them play for a little bit, then I was just like, okay, I need what I want. And that's the thing also, it's actors have to, feel empowered to do what they think is best. And I think that's fine as long as you can, get what you want as a director. And particularly when you're doing comedies, you have to be able to get choices in the editing room, because you just don't know what's gonna work, especially if it's meant to be funny, how it's gonna be. So, I think that on something like that, it's just hard. You have to, I had their trust, again, based on the material. And then with Best Man Holiday was also, they knew what I had done. We had watched the movie. the first movie together as a group, and they saw themselves and like what they did as actors. I saw what I did as a director, things that weren't great. Like I'm looking at that card table scene, like this like Philly cheesesteak with an aluminum foil. Like that looks terrible. Like I would never do that today, And then like the Quentin smoking, it's like I would have had him probably smoke a blunt rather than a cigarette. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was like it's the stuff like that just is a little bit different.
You said on Best Man Holiday they were being difficult that day. Yeah. Now Terrence Howard is well on his way. He's a star. Many of them were bona fide stars. How do you navigate that? Because you and I talked offline, and you were pretty vocal about a certain superstar who is black like us, who you found to be quite difficult. And I wonder, and at the time the quote I think was, he's harder on black directors. How often do you encounter that? Because you deal with a lot of, fully black cast.
I think it's a trial and error kind of thing. You hear a lot about some people's reputations precede them, and you're like, well, they haven't worked with me, so maybe it'll be different, and sometimes it is.
Was that the case with the superstar, middle initial L?
That was not a great experience. I mean, we got along in the beginning. She's talking about Sam Jackson. We got along great at first, but I never. The main thing I will say about that is I never gained his trust. He's the kind of actor who just wants to do 2 takes and that's it, and they're always going to be the same. And he wants to get his character set very early. And so when I first worked with Martin Lawrence, like I'm used to having rehearsal periods. I talked to his agent. They were like, well, he doesn't rehearse. I was like, what? He's like, well, he doesn't rehearse. You're gonna have to, I said, well, I can't do that. I gotta get my hands. I gotta mold. We gotta figure out this character together. He's like, I said, how am I supposed to do that? He said, I think you're gonna have to adjust your process. And I was like, oh shit, But Martin and I got along great. And Martin is somebody who appreciated my direction, and he loved what I was doing with that movie. So, it's a case-by-case basis, like not everyone is trusting, not everyone is going to give you what you want because they want to play it the way they want to, and how do you navigate that? You just say, okay, well, you try to appeal to, the sense of we're all going towards the same goal. And I have to think about everybody's performance, the entire movie, not just your performance. And so sometimes, the appeal works. Sometimes they end up on the cutting room floor and they get mad. And I'm like, well, if you had listened to me, you might have been in the movie longer, So things like that happen. And fortunately, it hasn't been that's not been the norm. Like I love working with actors, and generally speaking, actors really love working with me.
Have you ever had to fire anybody off the set?
Fire an actor?
Surely you'd remember, Malcolm.
No, I'm thinking like we had to recast somebody or no. I mean, when you cast somebody, you don't have time to be firing people. You gotta ride this horse, man, and like you gotta just
shoots, none of that. You can't do all that.
You can't. I mean, unless it's really not working out, yeah. or the studio says, hey, this performances aren't working. So hopefully you work those kinks out in the audition process. You work them out in the rehearsal process, and hopefully you've cast very well. And then when they say there's a saying that 90% of directing is casting, I think that's largely true. If your actors are top notch and know their lines and know their character and are ready and present and you're there for them, then it's fantastic.
You said you were on top of the world, right? You have this hit movie. Everybody in Hollywood wants to talk to you then. And then you had some other things that, were thrown at you. Hitch, you turned that down.
I did turn down Hitch.
I mean, that takes a lot of courage because at the time you cited, well, there's the pressure, the expectations, and you weren't down with that.
Well, there's certain things that happen in your career. I mean, look, I think there's a couple of things that happened with the ride with turning down Hitch. Like, one, I did Undercover Brother, and it was a very difficult movie to do because it was a pure comedy, and I didn't know how to direct a comedy as opposed to directing something like The Best Man, which is, a dramedy by and large. Your comedies they're quicker, there's a tone, but you have to be able to navigate that, and there's a pace that goes along with it, and knowing how to land jokes and knowing how to direct actors in that comedic space. And so it took up a long part of my life. There was a lot of pressure on it that was very tough for me. So when Hitch came around, I loved the script. The first draft I'd seen it, then they went to somebody else, and then by the time they came back around to me, the script had changed. I didn't like it as much, but they were like, "We want you to do it. We're gonna have it's a go picture. We've got Will Smith shooting in New York." I'm like, if I got a movie like that today, I'd be like, "Sign me up, I'm in." But the thing was, they were saying we're gonna have a bunch of writers around the clock, and the script's always going to get better. And I was scared of that because the studio expectations are going to be very high. And when I get to set, I like to know what I'm doing. I like to have a game plan. I'm not the kind of, at that time in particular, I wasn't the kind of director that could come onto the set and get the pages for the first time and be like, okay, how are we going to figure this out?
Are you now? I mean, have you evolved into that now?
Now it's that would not intimidate me.
But it's just so.
I'll give you an example. I came on to shoot Space Jam this summer, and I had nothing to do with the sets, the costumes, casting the movie, or anything. The train was moving, and they were like, jump into the deep end. And I was like, all right. And and
why? Why did you want to do that one?
The time it was really, timing's everything, and the universe provides. I mean, I had another movie that I was gonna do that fell through. This came in at a time where I wasn't sure what I was gonna do for the year. They presented it to me. I said, oh, interesting. And I talked to some people who were in the industry that, had an experience with taking over a movie before, and I was like, why'd you do it? And, the conversation we had was very encouraging, and I was like, I mean, I love LeBron James, I love basketball, I grew up with the Looney Tunes.
Is that really, part of the reason that you did it? That's nice.
Yeah.
You need that experience.
Well, I don't know if I needed the experience, but it was like, okay, I can contribute to this. I see what the issues are here, and I can help. But 15 years ago, that's not who I was, and I would have been and my career could have been very different. Hitch may not have turned out to be the movie that it is if I was directing the movie. At that particular time in my life. Boy,
we never think of it that way. We always just think of the opportunity that we missed or
exactly. But what's for you was for you. Some things ain't for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just wasn't meant to be. It's a learning. It was a stepping stone. It was a learning curve. I'm like, and I look back at it now. I'm like, well, I could have done it now. Back then, who knows what would have happened? I wouldn't have been intimidated by it now, though.
Be honest. What's it like to direct LeBron?
It's great. LeBron is great. He takes direction well. He knows his lines. He's technical. He's down for anything. He wants to please. He's great, and no ego when it comes to directing, like taking direction. And it's like that's what's great. But that's what your actors are supposed to do. You know, they should have an opinion. They should have a point of view, but your job as director is to have a vision for the product and say, okay, well, let's try it like this. And because I've done comedies, because I've directed, some of the greatest comic minds in the business, from Bernie Mac to Kevin Hart to Dave Chappelle to Martin Lawrence to Chris Rock, it's like, if I'm telling them, well, this could be funnier or give me a different delivery on that,
They trust.
he's gonna listen.
Yeah. The I do's, the vows, in The Best Man. You said that spade scene was super important to you. You poured a lot of energy into it. I wonder if you had another vision for the ending, or were they always going to get married?
They were always gonna get married. But here's the thing. Lance is the only character that could have done that. I think if it had happened to Harper, to Quentin, to Murch, I don't think justifiably.
Murch?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that level of surprise, betrayal would have gotten any, maybe, but Lance, because of his faith in God, because of the vow he made to God, that he was going to muscle through that.
With the debates in black living rooms and black,
And I
barbershops.
love it. And I knew that was going to be the case.
No way. I mean, they
plenty
had
of people
to
say
come up to
no
you.
way, no way. But because of who he is, who he was, he could do it. They were always getting married. Robin was not always coming to the wedding. The original plan was Harper was going to learn his lesson, go back home to his girlfriend, and ask her to move in with him. Lame, right? Like, super lame. And this is something that you should know also. When I had the idea, I had the script written, I was like, this is what's going to happen, right? And the idea that was proposed, maybe Robin should come to the wedding. I'm like, no, that's not what the story I'm telling. No, we're not doing that. Terrible idea. Not a terrible idea, because why? Because it is important for your characters to get pressure on them. They must have pressure applied. If Robin doesn't come, he's got to figure it out on his own. He has nothing. He's not in jeopardy of losing his relationship. She comes there. He's got to fess up. She sees he's got a black eye. He's distraught. It's like, and she can actually help him. She can actually stand by his side and be like, I hate that what you did, and I don't know where we're going after this, but I'm going to help you right now. And he needed that to get Lance over the broom. It made for better storytelling. So she comes to the wedding, and I'm like, and so I'm like, okay, she's coming to the wedding. He ain't asking her to move in with him. He's gonna ask her to marry him right there on the dance floor. And they were like, well, that might be a little too far. I'm like, you can't have him be like not asking to marry him at this point. Like, it has to happen. It's a movie.
So, I know we don't have too much time left, and there's some questions out there for you, but I want to talk a little bit about the sequel, right? You're feeling a little down. I think you called your efforts in a string of movies after The Best Man as crowd-pleasing movies, but didn't live up to what you maybe had hoped. And I wonder if that's come full circle. And I also wonder how you got, because now they're stars, Best Man Holiday. How do you get them all to commit again? Because egos are involved, and money and everything else.
You mean for Best Man Holiday?
Yeah.
Well,
because I read you did a little bit of trickery too.
There was no trickery. Real talk. I mean, like, I would say that there was I did 4 movies after the first Best Man, and there was talk early on of doing a Best Man sequel, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll revisit these characters 10 years later, not right away. I want other stories to tell. And so it was 2009. I had done Roscoe and Soman back to back. I needed a break. That's the worst thing I could have done. 3 years later, I did not make a movie.
You weren't hot.
I wasn't hot, and black movies weren't hot. The Writers Guild had a strike, and it ruined a lot of things, and black movies were just like a death knell. So, you know, I did Scary Movie 5 because I needed to work, and then I started thinking, I was trying to get other movies off the ground, and it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, the whole thing about branding was so in the zeitgeist at the time. I'm like, branding, people need to brand themselves. What's your brand? Da, da, da. I was like, well, I started thinking, okay, what's my brand? People know me for The Best Man. So it's time to like put this sequel together for real. So I called the actors up, and I'd been working on a story and just writing little things here and there, listening to a lot of Christmas music and stuff, and I knew what I wanted to do. And so I said, look, I called everybody up. I said, let's have dinner, and I have an idea for the sequel for The Best Man, and if we like it, great, and if we don't, we go our separate ways, but at least we saw each other, because we hadn't been together at all as a group since the premiere of the first Best Man. So I was
And
like,
everybody showed up.
everybody showed up. We all had dinner. It was a great, reunion. We looked at pictures. I pitched them the story. They were like, "That's great. Let's do it." And I said, "You're not gonna get paid what you're worth. Neither am I. But if we want to do it, let's go and do it full throttle." And at the time, like nobody was working steady except for Terrence and Regina, who were on.
Nia?
No, Nia wasn't.
Really?
It was. I mean, not like consistently, you know. And they were both on Law and Order LA, which was short lived. So they were available. I mean, Terrence was Terrence was working the most. And then they were like, we got it set up. Jump in the Broom did very well, and that's the thing. When other movies that are of that ilk play.
Because you knew that was go time.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here we go, and here's some photographs, and we got the group back together, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so it was
that's what I meant
also,
about
yes, that was
the buzz.
in terms of the trickery, that was it. Yes,
you hired the photographer.
I hired a photographer to take pictures of us. I wanted us to be seen.
And then you leaked them.
Yes, absolutely.
It worked,
but
right?
see, that's the thing.
I remember reading at the time, like, oh, they're getting ready to do another one.
That's the thing. When I was intentional about this, I was intentional about that. And so, we got it going. And so they were, and I think for them also, they wanted to be great. Yeah. They wanted to show what they could do. And the Universal president, Donald Langley, said, my God, all these actors should be working so much more. When she was looking at the dailies, she was like, these are actors at the top of their craft. And you have to know, like after that movie made $30 million for opening weekend, and they were like, whoa, it was almost beat Thor, and it was like, it probably would have made $100 million if we weren't sandwiched between Thor and Hunger Games. And so, there was this buzz about, like black movies. I mean, there's, how many people dusted off black movie scripts after that, that weekend? And so, and then Empire gets made and a whole bunch of, so it's just, that's what happens. Like, black people in the movies can make, and television can make money.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about the difference, if we have time, between you in film and then TV projects. Because it used to be that you did one or the other, right? You stay in your lane, and if you have this much success, why even tiptoe elsewhere? I asked Will, it's the same thing.
TV and movies have crossed over so much these days because, television is much more cinematic than it was back in the day. If you were in film school and you were talking about you doing television, you're like, oof, really? You can be very snobby about it. Now, where cable TV has pushed the envelope, network TV is now pushing the envelope, the streamers, it's like watching a movie every week, or binge watching something. You're watching a cinematic movie, and some people are going over to that way because movies are getting smaller. They're getting bigger. The budgets are getting bigger, but the mid-level movies, they're not getting made anymore. The movies that are cost like $30 and $40 and $50 million are happening on television now. So that's why people are going that direction.
Who has a question? She's got the mic right there. It's Brianna.
Oh, cool. Appreciate you coming out, man. It was really great to hear.
Happy to be here.
His background and everything. So I work for a tech, my name's Tori. I work for a tech company in Silicon Valley. Launched a product that was used by billions of people. There are very few people in the world who know what it's like to put something out in the world and have it take on a life of its own. And you're one of those people. Now, some of us were like me, I was like 18 when this movie came, and I'm like, oh, so that's what black love is like. And then you got people like my cousin who's still waiting on her Terrence Howard or still waiting on her characters from this movie, and they've kind of taken it as a model for their lives. I think that's partly positive and might not be so great to model your whole life after a movie. Do you take responsibility for that?
Your cousin looking for love? Not really. I mean, I'm glad, and and thank you for the comment. I've heard that before. Like, I remember I was at a panel, and it was Bright Young Minds, this Ron Brown scholarship, and these were high school students who were talking about. They're like, do you realize, like, that movie, like, set the aspiration for how I wanted me and my friends to be, and I'm like, that's a beautiful thing. I'm glad. I mean, and that's one of the reasons I made it too. It was like, I wanted us to see us in that way, that we could be smart and layered and articulate and still be down. You know what I mean? And want to be married and want to settle down and want to have children. I made Best Man Holiday because I wanted black people to cry at the movies. I wanted us to like have a terms of endearment. I wanted us to emote in a way that wasn't about somebody getting shot in the back, or a child being murdered or whatever. I wanted, to see a friend, and we got that, and so I definitely take responsibility for that, like I wanted the tears, I wanted the laughs, you know what I mean? So like, I'm glad that people are aspiring to, for that. But, it's a movie though.
But is that fair? I hear you talk about the responsibility, or is it even fun to have to think about your people? You're a filmmaker. It's a creative process. The sky's the limit. Do you feel that it affects the creative flow?
It doesn't affect my creative flow. I mean, I want to tell stories about, people of color in multidimensional ways. It's one of the reasons we made Girls Trip, seeing those women at Essence, from the most pious to the most ratchet, I was like, yo, these are my sisters, and this is the only festival in the world that caters to and is about black women. And this needs to be, and it generates millions of dollars for the city of New Orleans. And it's fun, and it's, it's layered and everything else. So like, yeah, I feel like, I don't like to say, oh, I want to create positive images. I want to create full images, authentic, yeah.
It often feels like, too, when we watch your projects or Will's projects, or that there's outsiders, non-black loyalists, who are so curious and show up for that authentic experience. What are they really like? What are black people really doing?
Sometimes they do show up, and more lately they've been. I remember when we screened Best Man for an all-white audience back in the day, and it was.
Why'd you do that?
Because the studio felt like, oh, we can cross this movie over.
Oh.
The numbers are so high with the audience, the intended audience, that maybe we can cross over. Woo.
What? No?
Crickets.
Really?
Crickets, boy. They were shocked.
Not quite ready.
They didn't understand.
Yeah.
They were like, wow. Like, I've got black friends, and they don't ever say the N-word. Like, I'm like, yeah, they don't say it around you.
Right.
So it was interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that was a failed experiment. And so, and there's always that desire to get, crossover audience. And, we definitely achieved that with Girls Trip.
Girls Trip, yeah.
And to a degree, we did it with Best Man Holiday.
Who else? I think you had a question.
I did. How you doing? What's good? So
I'm great.
That's what I'm talking about. So my question for you is, in the Best Man Holiday, when Regina Hall was cussing out Shelby, was that ad-libbed? Because it was like perfect. It was like flawless.
It's funny, I was just thinking about that scene the other day. There was a part, and I really regret that I cut it. But my producer was a bit of a prude, and the part that I had written this one part where she and I'm gonna get to your question in 1 second. She comes down the steps, And I think he's trying to get her to stop, and he says, "Why? Everyone knows I'm a dick sucking hoe, right?" And she did this rant where she was like, "Yeah, I did it. I read these niggas run a train on me. I did that." She's just read this whole big thing, right? And my producer partner was like, "She really shouldn't say that. Like, she actually did those things." I said, "No, she's not. She didn't actually do it. She's saying it for effect."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you should really try it without." And I did, and like, it wasn't because of this in particular, but it got we cut it out, and like we got a very, very high score, but that wasn't the reason. But some of it was ad lib. No, but most of it was scripted. I think when she calls her a lonely, miserable bitch, that was probably Regina ad libbing, but the words were kind of there, but the way she said it with such like, with such fervor and such like passion, I was like, damn, you did that shit, Regina. And I remember asking Regina, I said, "Do you think Candace actually did those things?" She's like, "You know what? I don't know."
We got another one.
It was not my intention that she had done those things, though. She was just talking shit.
So I have a question about, for people who have not been to film school and outside of the business, because I've heard there's only 6 ways into Hollywood.
How many ways?
6.
6.
What are those?
Interesting.
There's
No,
6
they're
ways.
not mine, so I'm not
What are
reading them.
those?
But he tells me, another producer tells me that it's common knowledge. So I'm just wondering, for people outside of the business, if you have a written screenplay for a TV series, for example, and you're wanting to pitch it to different networks or producers, and you're just kind of starting from literally square one, I just have the work. What type of advice would you give?
You mean, how do you like get it in front of people?
Yeah.
That's a question that always comes up. The answer is I don't really know. I would say what you need to do is show that you can write for something that's existing on TV right now. Write something that, like a show that you like, write an episode of that with these, here's an idea like for Insecure or for whatever, pick the show. And you somehow got to get it to a manager. You'll have to sign a waiver. You can't even do it to agents now because agencies don't represent writers right now. Some do.
That whole thing is how will that be resolved?
I don't know. It's a little scary right now. It's a little bit weird. Some agencies are capitulating, but I don't know. But I would say you want to get into screenwriting contests. There's a number of them out there. Film festivals have screenplay writing contests. You got to get it out. You got to start there because Hollywood executives come to those things. Hollywood executives, they're always looking for new ideas. The Blacklist is another resource where scripts, I don't know how they get submitted exactly, but they do put scripts out there that aren't produced, and they put them on a list of things that are highly regarded. And there are a ton of screenplays out there. Yours has to stand out in a way that, because executives read like a stack of scripts every weekend, and some are projects that are in development. Some are new scripts. Some are scripts that the studio's like, hey, you got to read this script now because it's a priority, and this filmmaker's a priority, and this actor's a priority. So your script has got to be able to stand out before, to an executive. But you got to start at a lower level, and hit these film festivals and screenplay writing contests. There's a ton of them out there.
How you doing? My name is Jabari Payne. I'm a filmmaker from Miami, based in Atlanta, Georgia. Florida A&M University alum, by the way, too. My question for you, though, was what advice do you have for directors specifically that really want to direct but struggle with writing?
Struggle with writing?
Can't do it.
No. You can do it. I mean, you gotta find a writing partner. Writing's hard. I think you gotta know how to break down story and do the 3-act structure. Tell the writer what you want. have them execute it. I think editing is very big in storytelling and in writing also. The editing process will make things very crystal clear about how to tell the story. And then you just gotta, like, you know, direct stuff that you think that people will let you, you know, that either they've written for you or what have you. You just gotta just keep doing it. That's what I'd say.
I know we have time for one more question, but I just wanted to ask you real quick. Do you ever get tired of people who, maybe a fellow Hoya, slipping you a script, or are you always interested in more?
I mean, you never know where the next story is coming from. You never know when the next authentic voice is coming from.
Ever find gold there? You know, somebody from college or high school or the neighborhood, whatever it is.
You know, even if it's a kernel of gold or it seems good, it's like I could be passionate about something and I could see it, but a financier may not. An actor that you are targeting may not. And, you know, you can only do but so much. Because, you know, there's a number of things I'm in development with. That I'm working with writers, that I'm trying to get other directors to direct. I'm developing things that I'm gonna direct. So, you know,
it never gets easy though after all this success. And is that for anybody?
It actually
in Hollywood?
gets harder.
Wow.
You know, it's like, you know, it's just, it's a process, man. Like you gotta. I'll tell you, what's easier is, or you know, I can't say it's easy, but like I definitely feel like I'm more confident as a filmmaker and a storyteller, and I kind of know certain things, and like, you know, if I feel like I've got, you know, a sense of the story and the characters, and like that's not hard, and it's a constant discovery. You're constantly, you know, discovering, like, you know, even when I'm doing a scary movie, not scary movie, Space Jam, kind of like, there's this new stuff that's coming up all the time. Like you look at a movie, you're like, oh, that's great, and then you watch it again, you're kind of like, you know, we got to cut that, and we got to cut this, and we got to like shrink this down. This got to move over here, and then it's all a process, and you get more attuned to it. But then when you're trying to work with other people, it's hard. Like, you know, not everybody has, you know, like I write a certain way, right? I have a certain way of thinking about things, a certain tone. You know, how dialogue should sound, how people should sound, how structure should be, and not everybody gets it. But I talk about that, like it's like sometimes your writers can be very talented, but they're green. You know, they don't know how to, like, you know, move certain things around. Writing is a very difficult process to get good, and when you're really good, people call on you, and studios call on you all the time.
Last question.
So my name is Tyler Moore. I'm an actress and producer here in Atlanta. I remember getting to sit front row at ABFF when you were in this position and Sanaa Lathan was right here. You talked a little bit about how you created The Best Man with the essence of soul food in mind. I just finished my feature film. I have shot and I am currently in post-production for it, and I had the essence of Best Man in mind. Can you tell me a little bit about your process of giving that same essence, making something so iconic based off of soul food, but at the same time having a completely different storyline?
Well, just to clarify, with Soul Food, directed by George Tillman, a good friend of mine, you know, I had read about it when they were in pre-production on it, and I knew all I knew was that Babyface was producing, that Babyface and his wife Tracy were producing, that it was starring Vanessa Williams, Vivica Fox, Nia Long. It's about a black family on the south side of Chicago. And my mindset was, if that movie is successful, and I thought it would be, because I thought black people wanted to see themselves in movies and entertainment where they're doing more than just shooting each other. If that movie is successful, they're gonna be looking for the next best man. So what I did was, I timed the finishing of The Best Man to be when Soul Food came out. So that's about. And that's a smart way to go about doing business, because once something is successful, they're going to want another one, just like it, or at least adjacent. So, and Best Man and Soul Food are not the same movie at all. They're different. They're almost different genres, but they're similar elements. And so that was the mindset behind it. So, I'm not sure how Queen and Slim perform or what next weekend is going to make for. If it holds as a strong hold, they may want some more of that. So you have to keep an eye on the box office of a movie, or at least what the projections are, how you think the movie might do. And if you've got something that's in that vein, have it ready, because that helped. Having Soul Food helped. Again, when I did Best Man Holiday, and I waited until Jumpin' the Broom came out before I went ahead and pitched it to Universal. Mind you, Universal had done the first Best Man, and the head of marketing at the time was, or on the first Best Man was now the head of the studio. Maybe I could have gone to him earlier, but strategically, I was like, let me wait and see how the movie does. If that movie does well, they're going to be looking for another movie in this vein. And the photographs helped. Does that answer your question? Okay.
But how does one get to be with Black Male Productions?
How does one get to be with Black Male Productions? Well, we are constantly looking for stuff, and we're constantly getting bombarded with stuff. So, is the movie finished? Are you finished, or is it you think that it's finished? Yeah, the proof of concept.
Sounds like you got a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning. He'll stay, right?
You give me your card.
See that?
Go from there.
Malcolm Lee, we are so proud of you. We're just so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you too, Sharon Reed.
I'm just here asking a few questions.
Yeah.
We'll do it again in 20 years.
Oh.
It's still going to be around, right?
God willing. God willing.
God willing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you
so much.